Welcome to This Explainer. We're jumping right into one of the most profound turning points in modern history. I want you to imagine a single morning, literally just a few hours, that abruptly ends years of careful, heavily debated American neutrality. It's the moment the entire global landscape flipped upside down. This is the story of infamy and intervention, the road to Pearl Harbor.
Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly does a single morning in Hawaii change the course of history so completely? On December 7th, 1941, a sudden military strike on a U.S. naval base gave us one of the starkest before and after moments on record. We're talking about a nation that was fiercely determined to stay out of a global conflict, suddenly mobilizing for total war practically overnight. But to really get a grip on the sheer magnitude of that morning, we need to take a step back and look at what the world looked like the day before.
Part 1. A World at War. The status quo before December 1941.
Now, as we hit the year 1941, this war had already been tearing across Europe and Asia for 2 solid years. America's entry wasn't Chapter 1, it was actually a violent interception of a storyline that was already well underway. You can see how this conflict simmered and expanded for quite a while, particularly heating up when the US started slapping economic sanctions on Japan in mid-1941. The main players driving this global narrative were, of course, the Axis powers. This was a massive military alliance driven primarily by Germany, Italy, and Japan. They were locked into this brutal, multi-continent conflict against nations like Britain, France, China, and others. The battle lines across the globe were clearly drawn, but at this point, America was doing everything it could to stay completely out of the direct military crossfire.
And this brilliantly illustrates the incredibly delicate tightrope America was walking back then. Officially, the US maintained a stance of strict neutrality. There was a lot of lingering trauma from the devastation of World War I, making the public incredibly hesitant to jump into another meat grinder. But behind closed doors, they were sending massive material support. Through initiatives like Lend-Lease, tons of weapons, supplies, and resources were flowing directly to Britain and other allied nations. So we weren't sending troops, but we were absolutely picking a side economically.
Part 2. Rising tensions with Japan. The simmering conflict.
While the brutal fighting in Europe was grabbing all the major headlines, the Pacific was quietly turning into a powder keg. Japan's military was aggressively expanding its footprint all across Asia and the Pacific, and the US didn't respond with troops, but with severe economic sanctions, the biggest one being crippling oil embargoes. Now, oil was the absolute lifeblood of Japan's military machine, and cutting off that supply essentially backed them into a massive geopolitical corner. It put an unimaginable strain on the relationship between Washington and Tokyo.
Which brings us to a really tragic, deeply ironic piece of this history. Over in Washington, American and Japanese officials are sitting at a table actively engaged in high-level diplomatic talks. They're supposedly trying to hash out a peaceful resolution to these embargoes. But at the exact same time, entirely unbeknownst to anyone in the US government, Japan's high command is secretly finalizing plans for a massive surprise attack. Their goal? Cripple America's Pacific Fleet before those peace talks ever even concluded.
Part 3. The surprise attack, the catalyst that changed everything.
On the morning of December 7, 1941, the world completely shifted. Japanese aircraft launched a sudden, highly coordinated strike on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. They zeroed in specifically on American battleships sitting at anchor and the aircraft lined up on the surrounding airfields. And crucially, this is a massive factor in how this day is remembered. This devastating assault was executed without any formal declaration of war beforehand.
The human cost of that morning was just staggering. More than 2,400 Americans lost their lives at Pearl Harbor. Along with that tragic loss of life, numerous ships and hundreds of aircraft were heavily damaged or just entirely destroyed. Just take a second to look at that number on the screen. The sheer scale, the absolute suddenness of this destruction, it sent a profound, immediate shockwave through the entire American public.
Part 4. America enters the war, the new reality. So the crucial point is that the shock of that Sunday morning completely erased any remaining debate over intervention. Years of careful neutrality were instantly replaced by an unyielding resolve. Addressing Congress the very next day, December 8th, President Franklin D. Roosevelt delivered words that still echo through history, calling it a date which will live in infamy. In that exact same address, he formally asked a nearly unanimous Congress for a declaration of war against Japan.
From that moment, a rapid, almost dizzying chain reaction unfolded over just a few days. Step 1, Congress officially approves the war on Japan, but it doesn't stop in the Pacific. Step 2, Germany and Italy, honoring their alliance with Japan, officially declare war on the United States. Which triggers Step 3,
America is instantly thrust into both the Pacific and the European theaters. The global war had finally reached American shores, and the U.S. was stepping fully onto the battlefield. It's honestly hard to overstate the sheer magnitude of this historical pivot. America shifted from years of cautious neutrality to a full, unified wartime mobilization, literally in a single morning. This wasn't just a political policy change. It was a total societal transformation. Overnight, factories are retooling, millions of citizens are enlisting, and this massive, unprecedented mobilization would ultimately become the deciding factor in how the entire war ended. Which leaves us with one massive, lingering question. With a newly unified American public suddenly mobilizing all of its vast industrial power and human resources for combat, how will this sudden entry change the fate of the Pacific and European theaters? That's exactly what we'll be looking at next time.